You spoke about cash in retirement, and the next question is actually about that. It's from Troy. He says, does having 18 to 24 months in cash allow one to keep a more aggressive investments in retirement because one has time to ride out a tough market? And he's thinking of his dad who is about to retire. So maybe he's a more aggressive investor. What do you think?
Well, it's more than that, though, because you just don't have S&P 500 and then cash. I mean, that's why I think a lot of people, because they're like, I'm trying to think of, they like VU forever or something, they always, VU or die, there's all kind of people out there. And this is the part that I tell people, because what we had in Troy, because this will get chopped up into clips, so we need to make sure we give the context from the previous answer too, is that we had a question asked about somebody who made an emotional reaction and sold at the world's worst time. And I'm just going to give you guys the context that when you're retired and you spent your entire life being a builder and a saver and investing, and then when you transition, you flip the switch and now you're a consumer of the resources you built over your life, it does some weird mental things to you. Sure. So don't judge. If you're a young person out there listening to this, you're like, I could VU forever. I could VU or die because, I'm a good investor. You haven't walked in the shoes of a retiree that I know not only has walked away from the relationships that they were used to seeing every day, but then when the market goes down and they see the market go down 15, 20%, it just hits completely different from an emotional standpoint. So I have a lot more grace, a lot more understanding that this is the part where people need coaching and nurturing and somebody really to literally hold your hand through that chaos, because you have a lot of voices in your head, a lot of them internally, your gatekeepers, and then you have the news media not helping because you have more time to watch the news media. So you let this stuff, and then you're probably around friends and neighbors, and they're always giving you their opinions. So that's why I always tell people, yes, you want to have the 12, 18, 36 months, depend upon what your risk profile is. But then it goes a step further, because as Bo shared in our previous answer is that when we're talking through an emotional client who calls in, we first go to cash and we say, what do you spend a month? And they tell us, hey, I spend, $6,000 a month. And I'm like, man, we already got you covered for the next year and a half. And they're like, yeah, but have you seen so-and-so? And they'll either talk about politics or they'll talk about some world event that's going on. And they say, okay, let's take that worst case scenario. Let's look now. Remember, you're not just all equities. We've got some bonds in there too. And we'll say, okay, if you spend this much, how much do we have in your bond portfolio? Wow, now we're 6 years out. You think this is going to be going on 6 years? And then usually they're like, well, if it is, I'm like, well, if it is, then this whole thing is kind of imploding upon itself, and we have a whole different conversation for that. But usually, no. Markets, 3-5 years in the future, we're back to rocking and rolling. We just did an entire show to set up this Q&A segment, where if you just took the headline where everybody was getting scared to death because the news media was telling you how horrible things were and the sky was falling. If you fast forward, it when in doubt, zoom out, and went 3 years in the future from that headline, it was typically the market was up 25 to 35%.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think people, you just need a little more context. When in doubt, zoom out. Time in the market's more important than timing the market. But the way you can keep yourself time in the market is by having the asset allocation that reflects the craziness of your overactive brain in retirement.
Yeah, I think 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses as an emergency fund while you're working is to replace temporary bouts of unemployment. Your income goes away, it's supposed to replace that income. 18 to 24 months is actually supposed to replace your full income. You're no longer out there working. So I would not think about that portion of your portfolio as the conservative piece of your portfolio, so I still say aggressive. I would think of it more as it's really replacing your income. It's replacing your wage. So naturally, your portfolio should still be more conservative, even though you have that 18 to 24 months, because it needs to stay constantly replenished. I got an analogy, Brian. Can I share an analogy?
Yeah, I love analogies.
This is good. I don't know if it's good. This is probably not good. I was at church on Sunday, and it was a thing afterwards, and we had some balloons. And some kid let go of a balloon and it went to the ceiling. And It's probably about 10 feet up there. And there's a group of guys standing around. And, I was sitting there thinking, 10 feet, all right. I could probably do if I did it, I'd probably be okay. And 23-year-old me wouldn't have even thought about it. It would have been totally fine, jump up there, grab it, no big deal. But I thought, you know what? Is the risk, is what could go wrong actually worth me trying to do that? And I made that risk assessment. No, even though I could think like, okay, this might work out and I'll probably be okay. Was it worth the risk? I think that retirees are no different. Just because you've done the math, you think, okay, this might make sense. If it doesn't, if it does go wrong, if you do have too aggressive a portfolio, if you don't have enough liquidity, will it have been worth it to pursue that risky endeavor, that aggressive endeavor? I don't think so.
So your analogy was that you could have jumped up and grabbed the balloon at 10 feet?
It was that I didn't. It was because I used to could, but at this age, that's not worth it.
So you wanted, in your brain, you're like, I'm good enough.
I was like, I
could do it.
But
I could dunk that ball.
Right. Like, would you jump up and grab it? No. You used to dunk.
I wouldn't have done it because I was in the middle of church. And how weird would it be? It's already bad that there's a balloon bouncing around.
After church. This wasn't during the service. This wasn't
okay.
You thought I was thinking about this in the middle.
Yeah, I mean,
no wonder he got lost on the story.
Matumbo.
You knew it was at the end, right? Like, you knew it was
Well,
like
I thought, you said that.
It went up, right?
You said that a thing after. So.
Excuse me, Pastor. I got something to do real quick.
That's what I envisioned.